Welcome back to the What If It Works podcast. I am your host, Ann Vogt, and I am pumped for episode 38. It is my first interview podcast. I am talking today with Chris Gordon all about the attitude of gratitude. And before we get into our interview, let me share some gratitude with all of you. This episode is going to help me break the 2,000 downloads mark for the What If It Works podcast, which launched last August. And so I just want to say thank you so much for those of you who are listening and engaging, utilizing some of the techniques and the strategies taught in this podcast, but also sharing it with others. You are making an incredible impact on others and influencing them to shift their behavior as well. And that is the goal of this podcast. And we are doing it. I could not be here without you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Now it is time to dive into the interview with Chris Gordon, the author of the book From Survivor to Striver. Not only are we going to hear his story of survival, but also how he utilized his experience to now go out and change the lives of others. I am confident that you will be inspired by this episode and you will be going out there and playing tag with the people around you. Not sure what I'm talking about? Well, get ready to understand. Listen up and enjoy. Welcome to the What If It Works podcast. I am so excited to have my first guest. Chris, did you know you were my first guest?
I did not, Ann. I'm so excited now. Now I feel like I have to be extra good.
Yeah, be ready, right? I am pumped. So Chris and I are local to New Ulm. I met Chris a couple years ago. Our kids are actually connected, but we've recently connected because both of us are on a journey. We are out here trying to help people just take accountability and move themselves forward, see a different future for themselves and get unstuck. So I'm really excited to have Chris on the podcast today to talk to him a little bit about what he's up to, what his message is, and how you could hear a little bit more of his story, either direct from him or from a book that he has recently published. So we are so excited. Let's dive into it. Chris, tell us a little bit about who you are.
All right, sounds great. And first of all, Ann, thank you so much for having me. And I am really excited to be your first guest. This is really cool. So I am, or was, a seemingly average and ordinary husband and father of three. My wife, Becky, teaches in New Ulm Public Schools. Our kids go to New Ulm Public Schools. I am also a teacher, though I don't teach at New Ulm Public Schools. I teach online, and I have been teaching online for the past 12 years. Yes, there was online teaching before the pandemic. We were really ready for it, though. We were practicing for it, and we nailed it. We're still doing it, though, so it's more than a fad. Anyway, the reason why I'm here is not because I'm a teacher, though. It's because I'm clumsy. You see, 9 years ago, actually 9 years ago this week,
What?
I scratched myself on our exterior garage wall while being a playful dad, getting the kids into the van and on their way to school. Becky would take the kids to daycare and kindergarten before going up to her job at the high school. I scratched my hand. That's all. And I looked at it and I quoted one of my favorite movies of all time and said, "'Tis but a scratch." It wasn't bleeding. So I figured I'll put the kids into the car seat, and as they go on their way, I'll go on my way into the house, wash off my hand, and start my day of online teaching. 3 days later, I wake up to a lacrosse ball size bump on my right elbow. I go to the urgent care clinic. They look at it and they say, well, it could be bursitis, because bursitis is an inflammation in the bursa sac of our joints that causes some fluid to well up to look like a ball. And they told me to keep an eye on it, which I did. And during that Saturday morning, the afternoon, as I'm keeping an eye on it, I'm noticing that until my right arm is 3 times the size of my left.
That is
I like to say that I am the Incredible Hulk in mid-transformation. However, I didn't feel very angry and smashy. I felt more sicky and tiredy. Well, we found a babysitter for the kids. Becky took me to the emergency room. They admitted me. And overnight, they kept an eye on me, but found that not only was I with a ginormous appendage, I also had gone septic. So I was in real trouble.
Yeah.
They keep me overnight. And in the morning, that attending doctor says, Mr. Gordon, this is beyond us. We can do nothing more for you here. Where do you want to go? Well, I thought about it for all of a half second and said Mayo, because A, it's Mayo, it's world renowned, and 2, because Becky's parents, Bill and Dee, lived in Rochester. So I knew that Becky, the kids, and Max the dog would have a place to stay while I was getting checked out I was sure, and 2 or 3 days, this would take to resolve itself. You know, me being a special education teacher with my vast medical knowledge. So they fly me to Rochester, and it's there at the St. Mary's Hospital where they diagnose me with necrotizing fasciitis, also known as flesh-eating bacteria. This is, by the way, the point where I should say, here's a care warning. I'm going to be talking about flesh-eating bacteria. So sorry about that. Spoiler alert.
Yes, I love it.
I do share that warning before my presentations. So they get me right into the surgery, and I am out for 5 days in a coma. During that time, they remove all the infected skin and tissue from my right arm, shoulder, chest, and back. When they remove all that infected skin or tissue, they call it debriding. They notice that the infection had gone so far into my right arm that they were planning to amputate. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a consideration. They were ready to make me a southpaw. However, it was later discovered that I still had hand function by the occupational therapist. So they elected to remove a 15-inch by 4-inch flap of skin from my left thigh and place it on my right hand and forearm. So since this is my thigh on my hand, I call this my thand. Copyright pending. You see it there. But now, like the story when you give a mouse a cookie, the arm is saved, but now I have a ginormous hole in my leg. So they took out my vastus lateralis, which is my outermost quadricep muscle, and installed knobs on either side of my wound. And then on the inside, they installed a Jacob's ladder. It's like a shoestring type contraption. And they would tighten the knobs in my leg over time. So imagine looking like Deadpool in the upper half of my body, Frankenstein's monster on the bottom half.
And through this, you are not part of this decision-making process.
Oh no, I am.
You're out.
Out. I am taking a really good nap.
Yeah, perfect. And
so they also need to start taking skin graft harvestings because I still have all this square acreage that has nothing covering it. So they take skin graft harvestings from my back and my thighs. I'm not sure if you can tell, Anne, I am a ginger. And if it were hard for me to get a tan before, it's impossible now. I have racing stripes, though, which make me fast.
Oh, very cool. Very good. Very good.
So finally I wake up. Becky and Bill, my dad, comes to the hospital along with my brother Jeff. Now, usually people have family close. I'm from Michigan. I grew up here in just north of Flint. My brother, also from Michigan, still lives in Michigan. So he flew from Muskegon, Michigan, where he lives currently, to the Twin Cities and then took a shuttle down to Rochester as soon as he found out what was going on with me. And he stayed a week and a half, sometimes sleeping overnight in the hospital so he could receive the latest word on my condition. So the three of them chat with me for a little bit and decide to give me some time to recover, to rest. So they leave, and I am now spending the first night awake in the hospital with my new body.
Which could you see at the time? You know,
I saw a giant yellow cast on my arm.
okay. Yeah.
I really didn't see my legs.
Right. Okay.
But I knew something was going on with my left leg because it was a lot bigger than my right was.
Right.
And I started thinking about things, and those thoughts turned to questions to which I had no answers.
Mm.
What was my body going to be capable of doing when I fully recover, if I fully recover? How was I going to relate to Becky, the kids, other family members and friends? How was I going to teach? How was I going to be handling situations out of my control? Because this was out of my control.
Completely.
What was our financial situation going to be like?
Wow.
I had all these questions, Anne.
Yeah.
And no answers. And when you're in that situation, when you have all questions and zero answers, you start developing a bit of a negative spiral.
Mm-hmm.
Because you keep jostling around. Okay, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? And I started feeling myself wearing a false smile. I would tell nurses, yeah, I'm doing fine, I'm doing great. But on the inside, I am wondering, what's the rest of my life going to be like?
Yeah.
Thankfully, though, those questions didn't have a long time to ruminate, because in one of our earlier conversations of my hospitalization, Becky started telling me about all the different things that people were doing for us while I was in the hospital. She told me how our neighbors were snow blowing our driveways, shoveling our walkways. She told me how the police were driving by the house every day. And I don't know if you had heard about my situation before this, Anne, but as you can probably imagine, the phrase flesh-eating bacteria spreads just as quickly as the actual bacteria does.
Right.
It seemed like
Especially
almost everyone knew our situation.
Yeah.
We had friends in the Rochester area stopping by Bill and Dee's house, dropping off food, dropping off toys, playing with my kids because I couldn't. My brother, who had come from Michigan, not only did he stay for a week and a half to help Becky and the family, he bought me an iPad, which became key. We still have that iPad
I love it.
9 years later.
Yeah.
A friend of Becky's from high school started a GoFundMe account, which actually raised enough money to offset my lost wages because I had run out of sick days at school and I had missed an entire quarter of the school year.
Wow. So did you return it all at the end of that year?
No.
No.
I was done.
Yeah.
They said, we got you covered, Chris. You go ahead and
go recover.
Yeah. So yeah, it was actually quite nice. I mean, it was like right at the break.
Right.
So it was, it worked out, I guess, well that way.
Yeah.
Anyway, all these people were doing such wonderful, loving things for us.
Yeah.
I could feel those questions and that negativity wash away. and I was left with what I now call the attitude of gratitude. They came with questions, but now I can answer these questions. So the first question was, what good things do I have in my life? Now, Anne, I'm going to ask you, what are some good things you have in your life?
Oh, great question. I have two incredible children. I have a husband who loves me and is being helpful right at this moment. I've got a career that I've taken a chance on and it's flourishing. I've got parents who are still around. We actually just lost my father-in-law recently, and that was something you just don't think about.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. It's just something you don't think about, that there are going to be people in our lives that are no longer there. And so I've got parents who are still around and an incredible mother-in-law. And yeah, so many friends and family who give me support, right?
And so, I mean, that's awesome. And that's what I did too. I thought about my family, my friends, my coworkers, people who share my faith, my house, my job. But then I thought about, what about those little things that we overlook, but actually bring us those daily doses of joy that get us through the day?
Yeah.
And so I thought about that iPad my brother bought me. And on that iPad, I downloaded Netflix. And at that time, the first season of Daredevil dropped on Netflix. Now, I don't know if you've ever watched Daredevil.
I have not,
and, but
looks like it's still on the list.
It is top tier comic book drama. I mean, the action's fantastic. The acting is great. I mean, they're bringing those characters back into the MCU because it's so good.
Yeah.
And I would just binge that show between my surgeries. And I just remember having a fondness for it, not only because it was so good, because it helped me through that situation. And then I would think about things like the window in my hospital room being in such a position that even when the sun was at its highest, it wouldn't shine directly into my eyes. And I know that sounds very random, but when you are sequestered or confined to a singular space for an extended period of time, you pretty soon get sick of asking people for things. And I didn't want to ask someone to lower the shades.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's the hospital pizza.
Ooh, good.
And what is your relationship with hospital food?
So, great question. I've only been in the hospital twice, and it was for the birth of both my children. And after both were born, all I wanted was a turkey sandwich. And I think after Ella, I was in the hospital for 5 days, might have been 6. And I think I had a turkey sandwich every single day because that's what I could order.
Okay.
So I never tried the pizza. I never ventured out very far. I think I had a salad once or twice, but yeah. Tell me about this hospital pizza.
It was phenomenal.
Oh,
I was flabbergasted at how good it was. Maybe it was because I hadn't had pizza in a month when I had it.
true.
It could be that heart, that absence making the heartness grow hungrier. I don't know. But I just remember it being phenomenal. And I still think about it with fondness to this day. And so by finding all of the different things in our lives that we overlook, but actually help us out, I have developed what I call gratitude goggles. And I have this phrase, get gratuitous with your gratitude. Now, and I think you're a little younger than but you probably heard the word gratuitous used when we were younger to describe violence in video games,
Yeah, I
or
was gonna say, not
language or
gratitude.
situations in movies.
Yeah.
Gratuitous comes from the word gratuity, which is a tip, which is extra.
Yeah.
All I'm doing is asking you to be extra in your gratitude. So I look at this stapler, for example. Now, I'm not using the stapler right now, but
Right.
when I need to hold some papers together, boy, howdy, does this do the job?
Yes.
I think about my awesome Captain America holding Mjolnir phone case.
Yep.
I love this because it represents one of my favorite all-time movie moments.
Yes.
Captain America is one of my favorite characters anyway. The more you can find items around you that you can appreciate, that you could be grateful for, not because you have to use them at that moment, but because they're in your life in the first place, you're going to find yourself wealthier, frankly. You're going to find all kinds of wealth around you because of the gratitude you have for those items. And instead of wondering what you don't have. So what good things did I have in my life? That was the first question I asked myself. Then I asked myself, what about the people in my life? Who do I appreciate? How can I acknowledge those I appreciate in my life? And like you said before, you love your family and your friends, and so do I. And I thought of them too. But I also thought about the nursing staff because, yes, they're at the Mayo Clinic. They're world class. They're professional to a T. But they also became my friends. In fact, I love telling this story. When you are in the hospital for an extended period of time, they have this poster they put on the wall called the Getting to Know You poster. And one of the questions on my poster was favorite movie.
Okay.
Now, Anne, I told you I love comics. I have a stormtrooper behind me. In fact, on my wedding ring, it says "I know" in Arabic. And I am flanked to the left here by Transformers.
Okay.
So you could probably guess what I put for my favorite movie.
Star Wars.
Close. Blazing Saddles.
I do remember this now that you say that. We're going to talk about your book in a minute, but when I got to that, I died laughing because we still quote that movie all the time.
Oh, yeah. It's one of the most biting social commentaries you will ever find.
Yeah.
I absolutely adore that movie. So I put it on. I had them put it on there.
Yeah.
Well, one Monday morning, Chris, the head nurse, practically runs into my hospital room. She's so excited for some reason. And she says, Chris, I was at a garage sale and I saw this and I thought of you, and here it is. It was a DVD copy of Blazing Saddles.
So kind.
Out of all the things she's thinking about on her day off, she not only recognizes that it's a movie that I like, and I'm one of how many patients she's taking care of, but she also goes and buys it for me. That DVD copy is one of my prized possessions, not because of the market value it has, but because of the love and friendship in which it was given.
Yeah.
And by seeing that gift as a token of love and friendship, I think we can find ourselves developing more appreciation for people beyond the gift that was given.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really important to do.
Yeah, I personally I'm not a gift giver. And I just celebrated my 40th birthday last year. And one of the gifts that I think I will remember forever was my friend Brittany gave me fresh cut flowers from her garden in a little mason jar and a jar of her homemade chili. And I don't know why I got so emotional receiving this gift, because it was so connected to who I was and who she was. It was not some extravagant gift or expensive gift, but it was so personal. It was a personal item she created with her bare hands, both of them. The fresh cut flowers from her garden and the chili that she created from her garden. I just felt this overwhelming wave of appreciation and being seen and loved. So I get that. Sometimes it's those small things, but it's that gesture that just is overwhelming in a beautiful way.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really important to see the spirit in which something was given and not just the dollar amount used to purchase it.
Yeah. Or even just the item in itself. Like this is maybe
Yeah.
something you already possess, but she bought it because she thought of you and
Yes.
brought it into your hospital because it's not like you're carrying that in your back pocket on your way
No,
to right?
the last thing I was gonna think, what should I bring to the hospital in an emergency? Well, I have Blazing Saddles on DVD.
Yeah, I should
No, I
probably grab
didn't do
that.
that. Yeah. And so that was the second question I answered. Who in my life could I acknowledge for my appreciation? And then the last question was, how can I give someone else a reason to be grateful? Now, in the hospital, my job was to recover.
Right.
That's all I needed to do. But when I left the hospital, when I was discharged, then I started taking action. I started running again. And as I would run, I would pick up garbage on the road or on the sidewalk or in people's yards without getting too trespassy. Some people don't like that. I would try to continue shoveling my neighbors' driveways or walkways or mow their yards when their yards get too long. In fact, I did that for our neighbor last summer, and he really appreciated it because he was going through a situation. And there's the classic holding a door for someone, which is criminally overlooked. Because when you think about it, you become a human doorstop, which means you're stopping everything you're doing to help someone else out.
Yeah.
And we never know what someone else is going through at any given point.
Right.
And by showing someone that we care enough to stop what we're doing to help them, it may get overlooked, but it might actually make their day. And the more that we can make someone smile and be seen and let them know we care could be a life changer, frankly, because depending on what they're going through or what social circles they have, they may not receive that on an everyday basis.
Yes.
And so when I took these three questions, I took the first letters from each of them, think, acknowledge, give, and I turned it into tag. And I know we don't know each other very well, but I'm pretty sure you're the kind of person who never had to play tag by themselves.
Correct. Correct.
Yes.
I did not.
It is rather boring and embarrassing. It's when you
imagine.
involve other people and you play tag with others that you really see the joy and the excitement in sharing that with more and more people.
Yep.
And so the attitude of gratitude is like that. The more people you involve, the greater sense of community you develop, and the more positivity is garnered through those practices.
Yes. And I just think of impact, how much impact you're having on someone. That holding of the door might influence the next time they go through a door to hold it for someone else, which might influence someone else and someone else. And now your one act on a Monday is impacting someone who's having a bad day on a Friday, whether you know it or not. And so I love that. And I love the verb tag, right? When you were saying, say it again, think, act,
acknowledge,
give. If you were to tell me those words by itself, I don't get super excited. I'm like, okay, I can think, I can acknowledge, I can give. But when you use the word tag, just that word makes me feel like I want to go do that. I want to go take action quicker than think, acknowledge, give. So I love this idea of tag, you're it. Like it's a little bit of a chase. There's a little bit of excitement, but you're gaining something back at the same time, which is a lot of fun and it's playful. And that's what I love about that acronym is how that encourages action.
Yeah, and you're making moments with people when you do that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it is the moments that you share with other people. And that's what people remember, right? Like you said, you can't play tag by yourself or it would be really boring. People need connection and people want to feel good in those connections. And what you're asking people to do in that TAG acronym makes other people feel good, which I love.
You know, I also want to talk about how, like you said, that tag brings on a connection, but it also helps, helps people out
Yeah.
of situations.
Yes.
And so, we have a lot of people in the first responder community, police, EMTs, nurses, and that, by showing them appreciation and helping them work through those situations wherever we can. There's only so much we can do. We don't have the training to do everything in their job, but by showing them that we do see them, that they're just not there as a fixture,
Yeah.
that we actually help them through their struggles, or at least let them know that we are there for them as they are for us.
Right. The other thing I love about appreciation is you gain something as the giver as well as the receiver, which there was a study done years ago where they had people write thank you notes, and then they somehow surveyed them on how they felt that day and looked at, what they rated themselves as. And then they rated the people receiving the thank you note. And it was amazing how much longer people felt positive about them taking action of writing the note than it was from someone receiving the note. They felt appreciation for less amount of time because they just opened it, they read it, they were like, oh, that's really nice, and they moved on with their day. Where people who took the time to think, acknowledge, and give appreciation in their note actually felt better about that situation for an extended amount of time.
And so I think I've seen that study as well.
Yeah.
It's amazing that the giver also became the receiver.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a key component of TAG, because you are taking action and you're putting yourself in an active state of positivity.
Absolutely. And you can control TAG. I can't control how many people appreciate me today verbally. I can't control that. I could sit for years waiting for my husband to appreciate me verbally. I'm making a joke, but he's a very quiet guy. He shows love through acts of service over and over.
Yep.
Where words are very different. And if all I was doing was basing his love on the words he uses, I'd be waiting a lot longer, right?
Yeah.
And so waiting for appreciation versus taking the action yourself and giving it out, you gain as much as they gain, which I absolutely love. Well, awesome. Now, you wrote a book. Look at this beautiful book.
I did.
YouTube, looking at this, I love this cover. Let's talk a little bit about the book. So in the book, you talk about your story. You go way more in depth than what you did today, which is very interesting. There's psychedelics involved. I shouldn't say it that way, but right, you go into a little different state of mind.
Yeah.
Your journey, which is really fun to read.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but then also in the book,
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I did. I laughed a lot, and then I actually got a little worried, like, what would happen if I got on those?
Oh man, yeah. I don't want to give anything away, but I have never partaken in those before, and it showed.
Yeah.
It was
a whole nother level of Chris was probably up.
Yes.
That, right? I love it. But in the book, not only do you have your story, which is incredible, just really unique. Those of you who are looking for a story, a memoir in a sense, right? What happened, and not just the storyline, but also, like Chris talked about on this interview, there are a lot of behind the scenes thoughts that an observer would not be able to capture, because there are things that he's thinking in his head, and there's ways he's acting and the people around him are acting that I think you do a really nice job of giving us a full sense of the scope of what was going on versus the play-by-play, right? So some books can be kind of a play-by-play. I felt like you really went into some of the mindset and what was going on there. I have a really great friend who's a former student of mine who is an occupational therapist. And she thought she was going into occupational therapy to physically help someone. She talked about like when she got into what's that called, like her residency or internship, she was really focused on the physicality of someone moving their arm again or someone losing a limb and having to use the other limb to compensate. And she came to me one day and said, I did not realize the mental component that needs to take place in order for someone's recovery. And I think you do a really nice job in this book explaining it's not just about you physically losing flesh. It's about that mental toughness that has to come through, because you had a couple choices to make. You could choose to be a victim of a disease, right? Or of that bacteria. You could have been a victim. You could have stayed in that mindset and think of how differently your life would have been had you done that, right?
And again, thank you so much, Anne. I appreciate those words. When I thought about all those wonderful acts of service people are doing for us, the first thought that popped in my head was, what a slap in the face it would be if I were to learn about all those beautiful, wonderful acts of service people are doing for me, and I just lay here and just let life happen. Because people are donating some thousands of dollars to help me and my family out. And for me to give less than my best to overcome this would be disrespectful. So I knew very quickly what kind of outlook I was going to have. It wasn't going to be, well, I'm just going to get through as much as I can. I'm going to survive.
Yeah.
I was going to push the limit and see what I could do with my new chance, my second chance, and with my new body. And just because I had that mindset doesn't mean I didn't have challenges. I mean, right now, my right side is cooking because skin grafts are non-porous, which means they don't sweat.
Yeah.
Which means there is no outlet for my body heat in that area.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to simulate this, you could take some saran wrap or cellophane, wrap it around your arm really tightly, and just leave it there for, say, 5-10 minutes. And you feel that warmth, and you're in the constriction you feel. That's what I feel all the time.
Yeah.
So for me to deal with that and just just resign to, well, this is my new body. I like, as I said, it would be a sign of disrespect. So yes, I still have the issues. I still have one fewer leg muscle in my thigh. Instead of a quad, I have a tri. But by using my sense of humor, by pushing myself to, as you read in the book, qualify, run marathons so I can qualify for Boston and achieving other physical feats.
Yeah.
I'm showing those people who stepped up for me that I respect you. I love you. I'm going to honor your sacrifices by pushing myself as hard as I can to do as much as I can with this second chance.
I love that. Yes. And I think, it's hard to go through what you went through and come out with that clarity. And I hope that listeners are hearing your story and not waiting for an event to happen to them, but take this opportunity right now to say, what can you do to bring your best What can you do to go change lives today? How can you go play tag this afternoon or tomorrow morning? Because you have the ability to go do that. And so stop waiting for you to lose that ability and take what you have right now and run. And I think with you doing presentations, actually, let's go there before we go back to the book. You present on this topic. What is your message? What are you hoping that your audiences take away from when you speak, from your story?
Well, I want them to obviously develop a greater sense of gratitude, but I also want them to, through that gratitude practice, increase their positivity and increase also their resilience.
Yes.
Because like I said before, just because I survived this doesn't mean my life is perfect. I go through struggles every day like everyone else does, and not just physical struggles, but I'm a teacher. I'm reaching out to people for speaking engagements. I get told no a lot. You know about this.
Yep.
So
you're a dad of teenagers.
I'm a dad, yeah. And
sure
sometimes, spoiler alert, the kids and I don't get along on some things. So I have troubles, even though I'm a gratitude speaker. So I practice this stuff all the time as well.
Yeah, because you have
but
to.
I want others, as you said before, to not have to go through their own life-threatening situation to realize that they can increase those facets of their personality.
Yeah. And you mentioned practice and doing a gratitude practice. What I love is that Chris's book isn't just a memoir. It starts there. It gives you a ton of inspiration to take action, but then it actually lays it out for you. So often you read a book and you're like, yeah, yes, I should go do that. But you're not really sure where to start. And so the second half of Chris's book is actually the tag journal. And so tell us a little bit about the journal and then tell us about how you can best utilize this in your own life.
Well, first of all, I must mention that you could tell I'm a fan of Transformers because the book itself is more than meets the eye. As you said, not only is it a book, it's also a journal.
Yeah.
But I wanted people to not just put down the book and say, well, that was a great story. My life stinks. No, I wanted them to say, well, okay, well, that was a great story. How can I practice this? And so I start off with a baseline assessment. And you could tell I'm a special education teacher because I have assessments in this.
That's right.
But I want to stress with people that the assessments are not there to give you a grade. They're just to see where you are. They're there to assess where you are in your gratitude at that moment.
Yeah.
And so it's a baseline to show you where you're starting at. And then every week I have prompts for every day for you to talk about what you are thankful for, whom you appreciate, and you're going to acknowledge for that appreciation, and how you can give someone else a reason to be grateful. Then there's a section where you can talk about your week's favorite things you're grateful for, person you want to acknowledge, and a reason to give someone else a reason to be grateful. And then I also have weekly prompts that stretch your creativity. I have some drawing prompts. I have some journaling prompts. I have some prompts where you draw a timeline, because I didn't want people to just feel, okay, I'm just going to write. I want you to be creative. I want you to explore the facets of your creativity and your gratitude.
And I think because when you're doing a challenge like this too, you need to stay engaged. And if it becomes too rote, then you kind of disengage. Where every week where you have, one of them is the compliment challenge. Like that's different than the very next week you have them doing a memory mural.
Yeah.
So like it's different, it's unique. It keeps you engaged and keeps you interested instead of, well, I did this gratitude journal for so many days. It's like, not only did I do a gratitude journal, I also, and then all the other activities that are in there that really increase your engagement, but also, like you said, increase your creativity, make you think outside the box about your appreciation, which I love too. I am someone who starts a lot of things and doesn't finish them. I get really excited to get started. I get amped up by a book. I get to the inspiration. I'm pumped. I get started and I have a problem following through. What's your advice for following through on the journal? Number one. And then what would someone gain by fully completing the journal?
Well, to answer your first question, it's about setting a demand for yourself. I've done this too, and I've started books, and I have every intention of finishing that book, and then something happens. Something gets put on my plate I wasn't expecting. Something, it's like the Marsha Brady issue. Something suddenly came up.
Yeah.
And now I forget about the book. It starts gathering dust on my nightstand. Write yourself a reminder in your calendar. Put it in Google Calendar. If you use a prompt, like a calendar prompt on your phone, give yourself a cue to read every day or do the journal every day. I do, besides my own journal, I have another journal that I use. It's called Growth Day.
Yeah.
And every morning, first thing I do, even before my run, I do my growth day prompts to help me get my mind ready for the day. And so make this a part of your day, not just something that you're going to do when you have time.
Yeah.
Schedule it in. Put it on your schedule. Put it after you do it after lunch, do it after dinner. You were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say what I like. I don't know if I can kind of showcase this in here is what you're really asking someone to do is just TAG. This isn't a 20-minute journal prompt. And so place it somewhere where you're going to take the 3 minutes, 2 minutes to fill it out. So is that your bedside? Great. Then grab a pen, stick it by your bedside. Is it your office desk, right? If this is where you come to every day and you want to get started and you want to think about this so that during your day you take the actions you laid out, great. But yeah, I definitely think get yourself into a habit, try to get yourself into a habit, but put it somewhere that makes sense. A lot of times I leave mine in a place and then I forget it's even there for weeks. And you're like, well, it's really hard to do a daily challenge if you don't even know where that book is. And now we know, I think both you and I have had experiences where we've given appreciation and it's changed our lives. Clearly, your very specific situation, you utilized gratitude for it to change your life. I saw this in the classroom. This was probably one of my number one strategies as a teacher to shift the culture in my room. And that was just increase the amount of gratitude I had for my students, not just them as a whole, as period one or period two, but also each individual kid and what skill they brought to the room, right? So I think you and I have experience where we've used gratitude and it's changed our lives. What are you hoping your readers who complete this journal, what are you hoping they see at the end or that they get to experience after they kind of work through your prompts?
Well, what I'm hoping happens, and is that when they finish the book, they're able to wear what I call gratitude goggles. And I talk about this in the book, and I don't want to reveal too much, but basically it's a way of seeing the world where everything has value. And the more that you see that everything has value, not just in terms of monetary value, but importance to you, that you see, wow, I really do have a lot going on. And that's why I really stress for people to get gratuitous with their gratitude, because as we both know, those big things that we love those big things that we're grateful for can have negative events happen to them. Someone could get sick or unfortunately pass away. Your house could have tons of things wrong with it. So you feel negative about your house. Your job could shift dramatically or be gone altogether. But if you think about, hey, I really like that song on the radio, or man, I'm gonna. I was just thinking about that show I watched. Oh, I love that part. Hey, I still have this from so long ago, and even though it means nothing to anyone else, it still reminds me of that fantastic time. The more intricate you can become with your gratitude, the harder it's going to be to have negativity overtake your life.
Yeah. And I love the
And I think that
analogy.
is what I want people to have when they finish the book.
Yeah. And the analogy.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, analogy of gratitude goggles. I think of goggles. You have to put them on every time you need to use them, right? And then you take them off when you're done using them, put them back on. And I think about this journal that maybe the first 2 weeks you're putting the goggles on and taking them off and putting them on and taking them off. But literally, if you were to do this every single day, I think by week 3, the goggles would just stay on. You would just be ready throughout your day to notice all the little things. And I think there's definitely a shift that happens to you, your personality. I don't know who you become when you don't have to take the goggles on and off and they just become a permanent fixture for you. That's been kind of my transformation too, is I was in a state in 2019 where I couldn't see any gratitude. I walked out of the classroom. You mentioned this too, when you said all of a sudden you found yourself in the hospital, like, what's going to happen to me as a teacher? You lose a piece of your identity. When you've been doing something for so long, teaching is your identity. And so I can imagine that feeling of being very scared of like, what happens to me now if I can't teach? And when I left the classroom, man, I didn't know who I was anymore because my identity had been so wrapped in what I had done that I really hit a low. And to get out of that low, I had to do a lot of reading. So a lot of personal development. And then I had to do a lot of gratitude searching. What am I grateful for today? Because I've cried my eyes out 14 times. Okay, but there's gotta be something, right? And then yes, slowly but surely, it just became part of my day. A little laughter, my kid saying something funny isn't just for me now, just a little laugh. It's like I laugh and then I go, I love this kid. This kid is so funny. Or my daughter does something and I'm like, oh, that was so sweet. And then I literally take a moment in my head being like, oh, I just love her so much. She's so sweet, right? And I think it's because it's become part of a routine and part of my mindset. And so I really think people going through the journal and getting all the way through it are just going to feel differently and just approach life so differently, which is awesome. I love this.
Yeah, that's what I'm really hoping for.
Yeah. I love the action. It's doable. I wasn't overwhelmed reading the journal and doing the activity. I wasn't overwhelmed. Sometimes you can get overwhelmed with some of those and then you stop doing it. So I love that it's simple, it's clean, it's consistent, but I think you're going to see a huge shift in your own mindset, but also in the people you're engaging with. Every week he asks you to tag 1 to 3 people that you want to share tag with, you want to share gratitude with. And just think, if you did the whole thing, how many people are you impacting over time just by following through on the journal, which I think is really cool. Awesome. Now, we mentioned you were a speaker. Tell me a little bit about your audience. Who would you love if people are listening to this and they're like, man, I want him to tell his story to this group of people. Who do you really serve in your message? Who would be kind of your ideal audience to seek you out?
If I could serve one audience, it would be teachers, because I am a teacher, and as much as I love speaking to students, as we know, teachers make all other occupations possible. And so if I could impact teachers, they can impact their students, which, which means that potential generations of people are now practicing tag and spreading that positivity throughout the world. And while I do speak with different groups, I would have to say, because I'm a teacher and I love teachers and there's such potential for influence, it would be teachers.
Absolutely. And I think just the passion that comes as a teacher, right? Presenting to more teachers, the passion is already there. They can feel that from you and they can get excited about that. Plus, you can speak to really specific examples where teachers are like, oh, I deal with that. Oh, I have a student like that, right? So they're already bought in to your message. And now you get to not only inspire them, but then give them some concrete actions to take to inspire their own students. I think that's great. People want to be in environments where they feel valued and they feel appreciated. And there are people out there, sadly, who haven't felt that themselves, right? I work with a lot of organizations who they're 40 and 50 and 60-year-olds are like, you do the work to get paid, to pay your bills and leave. And I hear that and I get that. But you also have an opportunity every single day to help other people, support other people, appreciate other people, build them up. If you can build up that 22-year-old new employee and show them that they have value and that they're appreciated, whether they stay at the same company for the next 20 years or they leave tomorrow, they can take that with them and impact other people, right? And share that tag with others. And so if you are someone listening and you are looking for a keynote speaker, reach out to Chris. Chris, what's your website again?
Well, thank you so much. And I greatly appreciate your words. And my website is chrisdtgordon.com. You can also find me on Instagram, on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. Well, chrisdtgordon.com for most of those. LinkedIn, I have to have Christopher Gordon, but Chris DT Gordon is there too. I'm also on Threads. So you just go with Chris DT Gordon and you'll find me almost anywhere. You can even Google search me.
I love it. And that's Chris with a CH. Chris with a CH.
Yes, CH and GORDON.
Perfect. Awesome. Anything you'd like to end with or close with? Any last message that you want my listeners to hear from you?
Yes, Ann. I want people to pass on perfection and go for greatness, because we are inundated with visions of perfection all over the place, on billboards, on TV, on our phones. But if you think about those images of perfection, I use that in quotes, how long did it take that model to look the way she or he does in that picture? How long did that car really look that well before it got a ding in the paint? Do you really want to eat that cheeseburger in that McDonald's ad, knowing what they have to do to food to make it shine just right for the camera? Perfection is fleeting at best and maddeningly, infuriatingly futile at worst. Instead of going for perfection, pass on perfection and go for greatness. Be consistent in your actions, be diligent in your efforts, and be perseverant in the bad times, because there will be bad times no matter what you go after. But if you're consistent, diligent, and perseverant, you might reach perfection once in a while, but you will always be great.
This has been so fun. I love your energy. I love what you bring to the table. And I'm so grateful for your time today. Everybody go check out chrisdtgordon.com. You can connect with Chris there. You could grab his book. We should probably say the title on here. It is From Survivor to Striver: How Gratitude Can Transform You into a Superhero. You can grab this at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, on your audio apps, or not audio apps, sorry, from your local bookstore. Grab a copy. get to work on that journal, follow through, and watch how you get permanent gratitude goggles.
And you can also DM me for a personalized autographed copy.
Ooh, that sounds amazing. All right. Thanks so much, Chris. I appreciate you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Anne. I really appreciate it myself.
My first guest. All right. More to come.
I cannot wait to hear what you thought of this interview and Chris's story. Please send me a message and give me your thoughts. You can find me on Facebook. Impact to Influence is our Facebook page, or over on Instagram at AnnVote, or always shoot me an email to my inbox that is impact@annvote.com. But let me know what you thought of this first interview. Thank you so much for your grace with the microphone issues. Man, I am someone who strives for perfection, and I know I need to let go of that. And I'm so grateful that at the end of our interview, Chris made that comment about let go of perfection. Truly just try your best in all situations. And you know what? This was a great lesson in that today. So thank you for your patience, and we will get better. We will learn and grow, as I want to help you do as well. Thanks again for being an incredible supporter of this podcast and for listening. Feel free to share this episode or share posts from our social media to help others get connected to this podcast as well, and the positive information that you'll find in it each and every week. I am excited for our next interview, which has already been set up. So if you are going to grab Chris Gordon's book and you are not going to DM him, so side note, do that. He's going to sign a copy for you. He's also got a fun bookmark that he throws in there. So go ahead and do that. If for some reason you're feeling a little shy and you don't want to DM Chris, please do me a favor and get your book from Survivor to Striver at your local bookstore, or utilize your local bookstore's online link to grab his book, because as we know, small businesses just get a certain feeling when you place an order through them. And hint, hint, that might be who my next guest is going to be. I'm not going to share who it is, but there might be a local bookstore connection. And just remember, what if it works? What if you utilize some of the tips and tricks that Chris brought to us today, and you start to see different behaviors out of yourself and out of others? What if you start to feel different when you are out and interacting with your team or your employees or even your family at home? It can happen with those consistent actions that we discussed today. So go find your small little things in your day that bring you joy and celebrate each and every one of them. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And thank you for willing to go out there and create change.